Sorry. Hi. Wait a sec. I made a mistake. Can you hear me, guys? Oh, I can't hear
Yes.
anything. Oh, okay. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, let's wait a few minutes for others to join. Why can't? Okay. Okay, so we got a few people already. Okay, I guess we could start. Mhm. Okay, hi, good evening, everyone. It's nice to have you guys tonight. I hope you can all hear me well. Um, yeah, we are the member supported Pure Land Buddhism Center of the Philippines. And with me tonight is my friend Kevin. Hi, Kev. Would you like to say something?
Hi, Len. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I can hear you well.
Oh, hi guys. Good evening. So just want to say hi, and we do this every week. So we hope you could join our talks because Buddhism will really help you improve your lives in a positive way. So hope you guys tune in, and we'll have more announcements later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Yes, like he said, um, we do this every Wednesday night. Like what we're going to do right now, we'll be reading a story from this book here on the screen, Something You Forgot Along the Way by Buddhist Sensei Kentetsu Takamori. And uh, by reading a story from this book, we then impart Buddhist lessons or practical lessons we can get from each story. Oh, by the way, can you see the screen well? Is it sharing okay?
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so let's begin. May I get two volunteers to read the story? One to read the first half, and then the other to read the rest. Yeah, so could I get some people to read? Someone to start it with?
Okay, I will.
Yes, Michael, please. Thank you.
Okay. Can I start?
Yes, yes, go ahead, please.
Okay. Treat high and low alike. Bismarck, I too am a shoemaker. German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck once went deep into the countryside to see some land he had purchased. The arrival of a train, there was an event, and people would gather around to see who had come. Anyone out of the ordinary soon became the talk of the town. The village shoemaker, a particularly curious fellow who liked to spread news, took quick note of the tall and powerfully built Bismarck and watched as he stepped onto the platform, seated himself on a bench and lit a cigar. What an extraordinary man, thought the shoemaker, and respectfully approached the mysterious visitor to see what he could find out. Pardon me, sir, he said, but have you come from Berlin? That's right. You are a man of fine build. What do you do?
Okay, thank you very much, Michael. And can I get another volunteer to read the rest of the story?
Me.
Oh, yes, please go ahead. Who is that? Uh, yes, please go ahead.
What do you do? Countered Bismarck. I am a poor shoemaker. I too am a shoemaker. The two men continued their conversation until a uniformed man came up and said differential, differentially, "Sir, your courage really is ready." The showmaker was stunned, realizing he had been addressing a man of high station. Humbly apologized for this. Unfortunately, Bismarck replied affably, not at all. If you should ever come to Berlin, please stop by my factory. The address is 76 Wilhelm Street. The village never dreamed that he had been speaking to Bismarck. The blood and iron. Chancellor showed himself to be a genial man of the people who treated all alike, high and low.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeffrey and Michael. Thank you very much for that. So, yes, tonight's story revolves around a shoemaker and German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck. Could be an ancestor of Ben. Could be right, Ben. Yeah.
B.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I have the same surname. But anyway, who knows? Yeah, right. So in this story, it is shown that German Ottoman Bismarck, von Bismarck went to the countryside, and his arrival was quite a spectacle for the townspeople. He is a man of fine stature, and a curious village shoemaker noticed this. Oh, wait a second, guys. I need to. Sorry about that. Okay, so there is a this curious village shoemaker. He approached the chancellor and struck a conversation with him. So he said, "Pardon me, sir, but have you come from Berlin?" And he said, "That's right." And the shoemaker said, "You're a man of fine build. What do you do?" To this, he asked the shoemaker, "What do you do?" And then the shoemaker said, "I am a poor shoemaker." And Bismarck said, "I too am a shoemaker." So this is the conversation that happened between them two. And at this point, the carriage arrived. And this is the only time the shoemaker realized he was talking to a person of status, right? Of high status. The shoemaker apologized, but Bismarck didn't mind that the shoemaker didn't recognize him or his status and invited him instead to visit his factory if ever he visits Berlin. Uh, Okay, so I might be assuming when I say that this incident with Chancellor Bismarck and the village shoemaker is quite a rare occurrence. Um, all too often, people in power or people of high status don't socialize, right? Don't socialize with the common people. Of course, that's not always the case. There would be the rare ones who do mingle with other people. So, based on this encounter alone between Chancellor Bismarck and the village shoemaker, what attitude did the Chancellor showed? Yeah, you could use your mic to answer or type your answers in Skype. What kind of attitude was this that he showed? Anyone? Well, okay, that's okay if you don't have any answer for that. Okay, let's. Yes, that's right. And being humble, that's right. That's exactly it. So, based on this encounter, the chancellor showed humility. That's right. Humility, being down to earth, humbleness, right? like Anne said. And how about his answer? He answered when the shoemaker asked, "What do you do?" And then he answered, "What is it that you do?" And the shoemaker said, "I'm a shoemaker, a poor shoemaker." And to this, Bismarck said, "I too am a shoemaker." But he is not, right? So, what was the chancellor trying to express when he said this to the shoemaker? Why did he answer, "I too am a shoemaker"? What is he trying to imply? Okay, yeah, let's wait for Anne's answer. Or if you can answer too, if you can use your microphone. What do you think the chancellor is trying to imply when he answered this? Of course, he is not a shoemaker, but he answered in such a way so the real shoemaker would feel comfortable talking to him, right? That's true. So that at least the shoemaker would feel at ease, right? Talking to him even after realize because when the shoemaker realizes that he is the chancellor, then he might get nervous or some other things like might stop talking to him, right? Okay. So by doing that, by saying, "I too am a shoemaker," Chancellor Bismarck was saying that to the village shoemaker, that you and I are the same. We are not any different from each other. Oh, wait, there's chat. I'm so sorry. Okay, let's see. Okay, yeah, that's right. Humility, Marisa and Ken said. Oh, Marisa said he wanted to identify with the shoemaker, and Evelyn said maybe equanimity so as to not know his real identity. Yes, this is uh all right. Yeah, that's another reason too. Maybe he wants to do these things, mingle with the people, so he doesn't really want to reveal who he is. And yeah, and in a way, he's saying to the shoemaker, "You and I are the same. We are not any different from each other, regardless if you see me as someone of a fine build or a man of high status." To put it briefly, he is saying that they are equals, okay, regardless of the difference in position or status. Humble people are rare, but when you meet one, it's always a treat. Um, I experienced this firsthand with the Japanese teachers, the Japanese senseis we have in this school. They always practice humility. Um, at first, I don't really know who were the teachers or who were the students because everyone is just acting the same, right? The teachers, they mingle with us students all the time. They eat with us, hang out with us, and other stuff. And when we attend events in Japan, they clean the temples with us. They clean the temple with us before the event. They do what everyone does, and no exception. And our head sensei, Takamori sensei, he will just grab a chair in this like eating area where he does his Q&A and sit amongst the student. So what I'm trying to say is one cannot feel an air of arrogance with the senseis, with the Japanese senseis and the other senseis we have. And that's an admirable trait that I notice from all of them. When you're a person of importance, it may get quite easy to be egotistical. So practicing humility is something that needs to be done constantly. So now we have humility here, which is the attitude that the chancellor showed. And I want to ask you guys, what is the opposite of humility?
Pride, arrogance. I
But
think arrogance.
okay, yes, that's right. Like okay, wait a sec. Yes, that's right, Ben. Arrogance or pride. That's true. Or another word for it is wait, let's see if there's a chat. Okay, Nan. So or conceit. So yeah, that's right, pride or conceit. And in Buddhism, it is taught that pride or conceit is a worldly passion. So, worldly passions are things that trouble us and make us worry. However, we can never really get rid of our worldly passions. It will always be within us. In fact, we are like balls of worldly passions. Um, we're made up of worldly passions, right? And the best thing we can do is to be aware of them and manage them. Okay, so uh, and since pride or conceit is a worldly passion, then there's no way to get rid of them. All we can do is to be aware of them and manage them. And there are seven types of pride or conceit taught in Buddhism that we commit. And we will find out tonight that regardless of how humble we look or how humble we try to be, we still commit conceit. Maybe not through actions that others can see, but through thoughts that we keep to ourselves. So, before I proceed to the seven types of pride or conceit, do you have any questions or anything you want to say? Okay, if there's none, then I will proceed. So, the seven types of pride or conceit. So, first one is conceit or pride over inferiors. This is looking down on those who are inferior to us or those who are have lesser than us or have less than us. Example is when there is an obvious difference in economic status between us and the other person, we feel that we are we feel better that we are not them or we are not in their position. Like when we give alms to beggars, of course we feel bad for them, right? But at the same time, we think, oh, I don't want to be like that one day. Or maybe when we know something, or someone rather, or when we know someone who is not, sorry, so many cars. So, example, we when we know someone who is not earning really well because of laziness or not doing enough hard work, we may think, you're experiencing that because you don't work hard enough. Look at me, I'm doing better because I tried harder. Thoughts like this, right? So can you give, how about you? Can you give examples of pride over inferiors? Maybe something you have experienced or something you have witnessed or something that we just normally do without even realizing that we're doing it. Yeah, blue collar jobs look down upon. That is true, right? Usually, we think, yeah, no one is exempted, right? We think lesser of them. And let's see the chat in um, employers over employees. Yes, this is right too, right? There are employers who look down upon their employees, and sometimes we don't even realize it. And even if we don't say it, there's a mind that uh, thinks that they are lesser than us since they're working for us. Or maybe another example is age, right? A lot of older people have this conceit. Older people would think because they are older, they have more experience and they know better compared to those younger ones, right? For example, in an office setting, you are among the younger demographic or maybe even the youngest there. You may find that your voice is really not heard most of the time because the seniors don't give much importance with what you have to say, thinking that since you're young, then maybe you don't know any better than them. Let me see, there's a chat. Yes, seniors have no right to respect unless they earn it. Yes, that's true. Respect is not automatic, it's earned, right? but not many people realize this. Some people, especially people of power, they think that they are entitled automatically just because of their position to respect. Here in the Philippines, seniors feel entitled. They cut the line. Excuse me, sorry about that. Yes, that's true. I've experienced that a lot. And I know they have a line for them, and they're given importance in lines in fast food. But yeah, it's sad to say that some are really cross the line. Some are kind of abusive, and they use their seniority. But anyway, it's in that case, it's more of the lack of proper implementation of the system for uh, giving priority to seniors. So yeah. And the second kind of pride is greater conceit or pride over equals. So this kind of conceit is when we want to think that we are superior even over those who are the same level as us. One example of this is, for example, when you took an exam and the results are the same score as another person, you would think along the lines of, hmm, yeah, we got the same score, but she studied all week for that. I never studied at all. I even had time to wander around while she burns the midnight oil, something like that. Essentially, what that means is I don't even have to make so much effort to be great, unlike other people who have to give blood, sweat, and tears just to get what we have achieved or what I have achieved, right? So let me see the chat. Why is it not? Okay. Gosh. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I feel your frustration, Zizette. And yes, so this happens too among equals, right? And not only in school, not only in tests, but when we realize that we're doing the same thing as others, but we want to be more special, even though we have the same output as others, right? So this is also a kind of conceit that we have or we commit every time. And oh, and if at any point you have questions about this or you want to say something, just let me know through Skype or your microphone. Yes, I'm guilty, Sandy said. Well, yes, we all are, I bet. We have experienced this. We may not manifest it uh so through actions or words, but we think it, right? We think it. Kevin too. Oh yes, yeah. We all are. Okay. And then the next one is excessive conceit, pride over superiors. Okay, this one is when we want to think that we are better even over those who are superior to us. So example is when our superiors or bosses did something, we would think that, oh, I could have done better. Or we may think, if I were him or her, I would have done it differently and have done it way better. Thoughts like this. So even those who are superior to us, we will always have the conceit of thinking we can do better than them. Okay, let me see. True. Yeah, Anne said too. Yes. So yeah, we are. Then we're slowly realizing that we do commit all these types of conceit or pride. I remember back in college, I have this thinking, excessive conceit. I sometimes have such an attitude towards teachers. I would think like I would think like this. I would think that I could have done a better way of explaining the lesson. Things like that. It's a pretty arrogant attitude, but yeah, it did happen. Because boss is so naggy and feeling mighty all the time. Yes, right. When especially when our bosses are like that, we can't help but feel this conceit or yeah, pride over our superiors. but still, it doesn't justify our pride, right? But it's a reaction, so more or less it's impulsive, and we already thought it before we could even catch it or even have the time to stop ourselves. Okay, so fourth one is, this is my favorite: obstinate conceit or inability to admit error. So this is stubborn pride, the stubborn mind that adheres to an opinion even after knowing that it is wrong. Okay, so did that strike a nerve? Anyone triggered? Many, I think maybe many of us has been in this position. I know I have been, and most probably will be anytime in the future too. Who knows, right? So this with this one, I want to ask you guys: do you have any experience or example of stubborn pride, or personal experience or not? It's okay, or something you've witnessed. This topic is so timing. Yes, I can read minds. No, no, just kidding. But yeah. Okay, so let's wait for your answer. So I think many of us are guilty of this, right? Stubborn pride, right? Uh, and inability to admit error. Uh, yeah, I feel you have lot of experience before with previous bosses. Okay, yeah, yeah. I have worse boss too, who just curses all the time. Okay, yes, Sandy says I'm guilty. We are all guilty of this. Sometimes I don't know how to say it in English, but um, I don't know what the word I'm looking for. But yeah, I think that's the word stubborn. Just because we've believed it for a long time, we stick to it. Oh yes, this is right. Yeah, I'm waiting for this answer, Marvin. In romantic relationships, yeah, this is true, right? This is where you usually hear this, right? Uh, uh, it can put us in a tight spot, and it's because things like loyalty and conviction are highly admired traits, but right, but in light of new information that sharply contradicts that thing you gave your loyalty and conviction to, it's okay to change stance or change position. But still, many people won't, many people won't change uh, their belief or stance just because of stubborn pride. And yeah, not only in relationships, but in maybe in political stance, things like that, right? Maybe would stay. Many people would stick just because they don't want to be called not loyal. They want to stick to their loyalty. Anyway, yes. So the next one is grandiose conceit or false pride in attainment of enlightenment. So excuse me for a second. So this is blatant pride. It's bragging about reaching enlightenment even if one hasn't done so. So the thing is, true people who have attained enlightenment do not brag about it or do not feel the need to brag about it. So this okay, let's see the chat. I'm guilty, but now I train myself to apologize. It gives a feeling of relaxed mind. That is right, Evelyn. Well, like I said, we are all guilty of this. We realize that we have been doing these types of conceit all the time, and the best we could do is just manage it and to be aware of it. Okay, yes. So this is grandiose conceit. Um, yeah, false pride in attainment of enlightenment. And then the sixth one is false humility or humble conceit, right? And oh, why did I put that? Sorry about that. It should, sorry. Let me just edit that. It should be humble conceit. Nag-save para. Okay, so humble conceit. So this is pride in humility. This is pride in being humble. So yeah, this happens to most of us too, right? And reading that humble conceit, who would have thought that you could put these two words together? It's an oxymoron, right? So when we give to the poor, like the first example, we have giving alms to beggars, we feel good doing that, and we feel great about ourselves doing that, right? So would have thought that even in our humility, there is still conceit. And another example is when we donate to charity. We feel so good doing that that sometimes it feels like we'll be good for a few months. Like, oh, okay, I'm good for a few months. And let's see. Oh, that's interesting. Yes, it is. But this is still conceit. Yeah. And sometimes when we become the bigger person, right? In a situation when for example we didn't make patol, or we what do you call, yeah, we became the bigger person and took the moral path, we feel we are the much better person than the other person. Things like this is also conceit. Conceit in our humility. And the last one is evil pride, or pride in unworthy things. So this is pride in shameful things. This is when people boast about the bad things they've done, maybe to make them look cool or badass. You've seen, okay, Trump and Biden. Yeah, politicians. Yeah, yes, yeah. Politicians do that, right? They brag about the shameful things they've done. Not only that, criminals too, right? You would see in videos sometimes that there are criminals who are being handcuffed by the police, but it doesn't matter to them. They just brag about what they did. Or some serial killers do this too. Okay, let's see. Those who kill animals and post selfies. Okay, sorry, why did I laugh at that? First of all, okay, yes, yeah, killing animals, but yeah, those who hunt, right? Oh, you mean that, Kevin? Sorry, I thought they are two different ideas. That's why I laugh. Yeah, those who hunt animals and post the kill afterwards. Yes, those are the worst. Yes, hunters. Yeah, it's okay. I get it now. So yes, this is one example, and I remember someone told me this story ages ago. So this person, he and his friend. Oh yes, would someone like to talk or share something? Is there someone who? Oh, okay. So, yeah. So this story is when I have this friend who went to one of the restaurants in Tagaytay, and then they finished eating. So that's great. And then afterwards, I don't remember if he even asked for the, what they call that, for the receipt. But what he said is that they just casually walked out of the restaurant. He just casually walked out of the restaurant, he and his friends, and no one from the staff stopped them. He said they didn't even walk out of there in a hurry. He even said that it's the fault of the staff for not being so keen. Partly, yeah, but imagine the server finding out that the table he or she was serving left and never paid, right? They would probably have paid for that. And I remember he said the bill was around 3,000 pesos or so, but this was around year 2000. So that money is really a lot back then. Then this person, when he tells this story, is so proud with a smirk on his face and so much pride that for him, he felt that he outsmarted the restaurant, but well, in fact, he put someone's job on the line. So yeah, that's one example of evil pride or evil conceit. Oh yes, scammers. Oh man, they're everywhere right now, right? I I mean, I find it almost unbelievable that in this time of crisis we have right now, there are still scammers. I don't know how they do it or how they can stomach doing that to other people, right? Scammers are, yeah, are very guilty of this evil pride. Yeah, there is shame. Yes, it's shameless, right? I know. I can't believe that he just walked out of that restaurant. And so these are the seven types of conceit or pride taught in Buddhism. So since conceit is a worldly passion, we cannot remove it in ourselves. We can just manage it. What we can do is we have to be aware that we are committing conceit so that we can manage it. Conceit is awful because it can almost always be seen or heard. But usually, the person doing the conceit is not aware that they are doing it. So, if we are always watchful or mindful of our actions, then we can catch ourselves doing conceit, then we can stop it from showing. This is the best thing that we can do. So, humility comes from seeing this nasty mind of conceit. And the more we see our conceit, the more humble we become. We cannot deny that we are conceited. It's best to be aware of it so we become more humble. Yeah, to manage them is to be aware, uh, to be aware that we are committing them, right? To be watchful of our actions. Now, when we're, I mean, most, what they call this, most of the time you have already committed the conceit before you you're able to stop it, right? But as you practice, as you become more watchful or mindful of your action, you will catch yourself in the mind, just thinking about it first before you even say it or you even before you act upon it. So yeah, that's just the best way we can do. Refrain it from showing through our actions or our words. So it takes practice to be able to manage our conceit. Okay, we'll try to catch us. Yes, yeah, it's something to watch out for, right? So it usually happens in the mind, but sometimes it's we react split second. We have split second reactions. And yeah, that's it for tonight. But before we go, I didn't notice that the time is okay, only 2 minutes. But before we go, two things. First is we would like to invite you. Before that invitation, first this talk is recorded and we upload it to our YouTube channel, so people can go back to it to review, or maybe if one wants to listen to a missed session. So because of that, I would like to ask if anyone is okay with that we upload these talks in YouTube, because some of you talk, and yeah, so please type your answer in Skype so we would know that you're okay with us uploading this to YouTube. Okay. And then second is, okay, we would like to invite you to this. In October 17th and 18th, we have this event called Hoongko, and this time it will be held via Zoom. This is a congregation to repay the debt of gratitude to Master Shinran, who is the founder of Pure Land Buddhism, the school of Buddhism we are practicing. So normally we do this in Toyama, Japan, but because of COVID, then we're doing it online. If you want to join, please message me, Kevin or Frank, and then we'll be glad to give you the link once it is available. Okay. So that's it for tonight, guys, and appreciate that you guys made time for us tonight, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in our next talks. Okay. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you. Bye.